And the second part goes much further. In 1950, the voice told me to stop work on the 1st of October and to prepare for a new work. Personal things interfered, and the voice told me to wait until 1952. And again, personal matters interfered, and I was told to wait until 1953, and then I was told to wait until further notice. And I received that notice in January, to begin now a new work. And it started in Honolulu. I started it there with Mr. Nowell and Emma Lindsay. And then later to that, Mr. Starkey came down and joined us, and then 3 other students in Honolulu. And that consists of our entire group there that started this new work. And as we were doing this new work, the impulsion was given to me to bring it to our students in New York. And so you can see, while I didn't ask any one of you to come here, you can see why you were brought here. It was necessary that all who are the basis of our work be here to unite in this work. However, if I invited you here, that would have been a human activity, and you may not have been meant even to do the work. And so I wouldn't tell anybody about it. And I said, whom God brings to us, whom God brings into this meeting, those ones God has designated to carry on the work. I don't have to tell you what a disgraceful thing it is that whereas in the beginning Jesus fed the multitudes, healed the multitudes, and made the demonstration of supply for his followers. In the early days of Christian Science, Mrs. Eddy bore the entire brunt of making the demonstration for her followers. Healings, supply, money, everything necessary. She didn't ask the field to support her. She supported the field. In the infinite way, at no time have we asked the field to support us, but we have supported the field, spiritually, in some cases even financially. And in every case, financially borne the activity of the thing. But you want to know something? That the church reverses all that now and says to its people, you must support me. You must support the church. You must support the ministry. You know why? Because the only thing that governs the church is the same thing that governs government, material sense. They don't acknowledge that they have enough spiritual sense to support you. They ask you to support them. But we can't be guilty of that. Our only support for each other is in the degree of our spiritual enlightenment. Don't ever ask your patients or students to support you. You support them spiritually. You support them, and if necessary, even with the finances. Not taking the burden of their living on your shoulder, but being a temporary help to them. If they ask for bread, don't give them a stone. If they say they're hungry, don't give them merely a prayer. Give them something to eat and some clothing. Prove by your own demonstration that you not only can, through the Christ, be fed and clothed yourself, but that you can feed and clothe the multitudes who are led to you. Don't have to ask for support. You be the one to give the support until such time as you unite like this and say, we are one. And even then, don't ever depend on anyone, not even your students, for support. Depend only on your Christ. Now, this material sense is responsible for our world as it is today. As long as we are human beings or live in a world of human beings, there is going to be unfair competition, lying, advertising, wars, rumors of wars. And this can only end when spiritual sense takes the place of material sense. You can illustrate that in this room. In the degree that there is material sense in this room, there is greed, envy, jealousy, malice, lust, seeking, self-seeking, so forth and so on. In the degree that there is no material sense, but only spiritual sense, there is love, sharing, cooperation, healing, giving. You see that? Now, supposing we here were to agree that every one of the 10 commandments could be removed from this room, and that we could get along without any laws against stealing or any laws against adultery or any laws against this, that, or the other thing, that we don't need them, that we're not here to get anything from each other, but if anything to share and give, cooperate. Well, that would be spiritual sense. Now then, when spiritual sense, spiritual consciousness envelops this globe, that is when there will be no more wars, no more poverty, no more ignorance, no more fear. You are all familiar with the fact that on page 40 of The Infinite Way, there is this passage that spiritual consciousness destroys material sense, destroys the bondage to material sense, breaks up material ties, so that we have no obligations to each other of any material nature. Our only obligations to love one another. You have also heard me refer to our work as a spiritual underground. Well, now I'm here to tell you that since January this has been in operation consciously around the globe. When you go home, you will call to yourself the 1 or 2 or 3 students whom you consider to be the outstanding spiritual students in your group. You will call unto you that 1, 2, or 3 whom you feel have so far left their nets that if you say to them, you will have to come to my home once a day, 6 days every week, and if you have the opportunity, Saturday, Sunday also, 7 times a week. Regardless of what other obligations you may have, I have to see you in my home or in my office every single day of the week. Don't ask anyone else. Don't ask anyone whose obligations and duties are such that they would say, oh, I would love to do it, but I can't. Don't let yourself get slapped in the face with that. You want only if it's 1 in your community. If there are 3, fine. If there are 5, still better. But be sure they are people who are devoted students of the Infinite Way, who are not mixing themselves up with Christian Science, unity, New Thought, and the Infinite Way, and thinking of themselves as being on this path. They aren't. You want, as I want in this room, only those who are dedicating themselves to the Infinite Way. So I want you to have in your room, for this purpose, only those whom you feel have left other teachings and are dedicated to spiritual living through the message of the Infinite Way. Now, I don't mean there aren't other ways of dedicating yourself to spiritual living, but I'm not interested in those at this moment. I'm interested in those who are dedicating themselves to spiritual living through the Infinite Way, and it's for this purpose. When they unite with you once a day, you ought to realize this. We're not interested in demonstrating peace on earth. We're not interested in demonstrating prosperity for any nation or for the world. We're not interested in demonstrating anything for anybody. We come together for one purpose, to sit in the silence and realize Christ. Christ, omnipresent, omniactive, in human consciousness. That covers the whole globe. You sit in that silence until you achieve your click, until you achieve your realization of the presence. When you have realized it, you will then realize that the Christ realized in your consciousness is now operative and operating in individual consciousness throughout the globe. Those who have died and gone on, those who are on earth, and those who have not yet been born. Do you see that? No use of just spiritualizing those who are on earth because they're going to pass off and the next generation is going to be as bad as we were. No. You are to sit in the silence until you realize Christ, until you have the feeling of the very presence of Christ in you. Then when you have realized that, you will realize that my realization of the Christ makes the Christ available in human consciousness throughout the globe, past, present, and future. Do you not see that if Christ were active in your consciousness and mine, there couldn't be a sin, disease, or death in the room? Do you not see that? Do you not see that if one person sat in this chair and had a realization of the Christ, that everybody in the room would feel it? You have seen that. You've seen it not only in our work, but surely you've seen it in Christian Science work when one of the very spiritually minded lecturers is on the platform. It's just full of healings. Just full of healings. When the others are on there, nothing happens. See that? The same thing is true here. You've all seen in groups where we had wonderful healings when I was on the platform. You've all seen wonderful healings in our classwork. That's just with one individual realizing the Christ. Now just think when two or more are gathered together and realize the Christ, and realize that if there are 10 righteous men in a city, what would happen? The whole city would be saved. You see that? Now, we're not going to demonstrate anything for anybody, and we're not interested in whether the world's at peace or at war temporarily, or in poverty or in lack. What we are interested in is that we individually attain a Christ realization, an actual awareness of the presence of God. Then, having attained it, realize that the Christ realized in our consciousness is omnipresent and omniactive in the consciousness of individuals throughout the globe, past, present, and future. And you will find that that realized Christ will dispel material sense. Just as a practitioner realizing spiritual activity in his consciousness removes the materiality from the patient, resulting in their healing, so does the realized Christ in my consciousness remove even the desire for sin, disease, and death in another consciousness. So is that with you. Now, before this trip is over, just think, before this week is over, we will send 20 people out into 20 cities, realizing the Christ every single day of the week, and realizing it not merely for themselves or the infinite way, but for human consciousness, past, present, and future. We may even set free those that are in torment on the other side of the grave. We may even set free those who would come to earth as new babes, stillborn, crippled, deformed, mentally or physically. We may set them free. What the action is, or may be, of this realized Christ is so vast that no one is yet in a position to know it, except that it has been given to me to do this work and to pass it on to you to do this work. Need I say to you this is secret? Need I say that it's never to be spoken of to anybody, except the one or two that you call unto yourself, and that nobody else is to know about it? You don't have to write anybody about it or tell anybody that it is a spiritual underground. We don't want to be thought madmen and mad women. We don't want the law to think that we've gone crazy and are going to interfere. We don't want the church to believe that we're trying to destroy it. We're not interested in the church whether it lives or dies. But they have to get the impression that we'd like to hurry its death. We don't have to. It's doing a good job for itself. Now then, and not the church will die out as an institution. The nature of the church will die, and it will be reborn spiritually. Now, There are some things that are too sacred to talk about. There are some people, friends of mine, mystics, who have asked me to write a book on my own inner spiritual life, and I've always refused. The reason is that what takes place inside of me is something so sacred I couldn't tell. I don't know if I could tell to my mother, and my mother's been my closest pal. It's a thing that I can't talk about. When I was in England this last trip, I was awakened early in the morning, and God gave me 2 articles, one called The Monastic Life and one called The Mystic Life. And do you know that I have never been able to publish them or print them? I hesitate. I draw back at putting such a thing where the unillumined thought can tread on it. But it's going to be published in England. Now, that is the way you are to consider this work that we are doing, this group of 20-odd who constitute now this backbone of the infinite way, sacred and therefore secret. Let nobody know it but the 1 or 2 that you invite to partake in it, and please be very sure that they are dedicated to the infinite way message. Because you find it very embarrassing if sometime they break away from you and then go outside and start talking about this thing, this newly conceived babe which hasn't been born yet, which we're still carrying in our spiritual womb. We certainly don't want the world banging up against it and banging at it. Let us prove it before we talk about it. I already have seen evidence, and so has Mrs. Lindsay, and so has Mr. Nowell, so has Mr. Starkey. They have seen evidence of what this will do in the world and how far-reaching it is, and how many in far places have responded to what we have already done in Honolulu. Someday you will see what happens through your realization of this, and it will astound you. But until you do, why talk about it when you don't know yet whether or not it will work, except that something within you says, I know it's right. But wait for a little more proof. And even then, don't be too free with it. This that I'm giving you today is the most sacred thing in my life. And if you violate it, you're not only violating your own sacredness, but mine. I'm trusting you with my pearl. I'm giving you the pearl that has been given to me. Treat it as a pearl. It's not for your sake, for mine. And do not permit anyone who comes to you to discuss it with their husbands or their wives or anyone else who may be close to them. This is a sacred work, and it must be kept a secret work until such time as, well, as it becomes possible to speak of it. But this isn't the time. This is the time for demonstration of the Christ, realization of the Christ. Don't think for a moment that you need a big group. Please be just as happy to have one person if you have confidence in their spiritual integrity. Don't endanger your work by having one extra one for the sake of numbers, or 100 for the sake of numbers. Don't do that. And I'll tell you another reason. It's as useless as having 20 practitioners work on one case. You only need one if it's a dedicated one. It's all right to have 20 if you're sure that all 20 are equally dedicated. But the mere fact of having 20 instead of one won't help your case one single bit. And so, this is a good afternoon and an aloha and a caution to keep this sacred and secret.